thousands of demonstrators in Brussels have marched against the Migration Pact signed in Marrakesh last week. Flemish right-wing parties called the march, which took place near major EU institutions, amid fears the pact could lead to an increase in immigration. Police deployed tear gas and water cannon as clashes broke out. About 500 protesters took part. A counter-protest organized by left-wing groups and charities in the city center drew about 1,000 people. The largest member of Belgium's ruling coalition, the right-wing NVA party, left the government last Sunday in protest against the Prime Minister's decision to sign the agreement. In July, members agreed the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. It was signed by 164 countries in Marrakesh last week, with us and a number of European states, including Austria, Hungary, Italy, Poland, and Slovakia, refusing to formally adopt the agreement. The deal, which is not legally binding, seeks an international approach to migration that reaffirms the sovereign rights of states to determine their national migration policy and asserts the fundamental importance of legal migration. But critics in Europe believe it will lead to increased immigration to the continent. More and more countries in Europe have clamped down on migration in recent years. Doctors Without Borders (MSF) was forced to cancel its migrant rescue operations in the Mediterranean in December after repeated battles with Italy, and in June, Hungary made it illegal to help asylum seekers. A huge explosion and fire has hit a restaurant in the northern Japanese city of Sapporo. Japanese police say 42 people were injured in the explosion, with one of them in a serious condition. The cause of the explosion in the Todohira district is not yet known. Some reports suggested a gas blast. Images on social media initially showed flames rising from the area, with debris all around, and later firefighters tackling collapsed buildings. Police sealed off the area amid fears of more explosions. More than 25 engines were reportedly deployed.
平安3条8丁目爆发火灾，火势误击，消防车救急车多数。
Twitter COMIRN 0 feet fan of Twitter post by @short to commemorate the emergency services were first alerted to the explosion at about
20点30分
on Sunday
11点30分
GMT. Japanese broadcaster NHK said the area affected had both residential and dining establishments and was about 3 km southeast of the city center. The Japan Times carried an image of firefighters working at a collapsed building and quoted one eyewitness as saying the explosion sounded like thunder. Another eyewitness told NHK that the blast had broken the windows of the restaurant he was working in, and that there were many injured people. Officials warned that the number of injured could rise. The co-founder of the popular app HQ Trivia, Colin Kroll, has been found dead in his apartment in New York at the age of 35. Police Jodos Media, the CEO, who also co-founded the video platform Vine, was found by police after his girlfriend reportedly asked them to check on him. The death is being investigated as a suspected drugs overdose. Police say HQ Trivia, a live trivia game on mobiles, became hugely popular, but its appeal waned this year. Officers of the New York Police Department went to Mr. Kroll is flagging Manhattan to carry out a welfare check and found his body, along with drugs paraphernalia nearby. TMZ reported in the initial media coverage of his death. Police confirmed the death in calls to other media outlets. Mr. Kroll and Russ Yusupov co-founded HQ Trivia, with Mr. Kroll named CEO this September. It was launched in the US last year. The free app live streams quiz shows, with a pot of money, often thousands of dollars, available to split between winners. The quiz show was best hosted by some big names, from Jimmy Kimmel to Bert from Sesame Street. Its popularity faded this year, dropping out of the App Store. Its list of top 100 apps. Mr. Crow was also a co-founder of Vine, a 6-second video streaming service that was bought out by Twitter in
2012 for $30 M24 米。
Vine announced in December 2016 that Twitter was discontinuing the mobile app. Russian President Vladimir Putin has asked the government to take charge of rap music after a number of concerts were cancelled across the country. Efforts to ban rap were impossible, and so the state should play a greater role in controlling it, he said. The Ministry of Culture would find the best way to navigate youth concerts, he added. His comments come after Russian rapper Husky was arrested after several of his concerts were cancelled. In December, authorities in the southern city of Krasnodar called out his planned performance for extremism. The musician's real name, Dmitry Kuznetsov, was then jailed for 12 days after performing for fans on the roof of a car. Speaking at a meeting of the Presidential Council for Culture and Art in St. Petersburg, President Putin said the problem should be approached with great caution. However, what I really agree with is that if it is impossible to stop it, it should be taken over and navigated in a particular way, he said. The president expressed particular concern about drug abuse among young people. Rap and other modern forms of art are rested upon three pillars: sex, drugs, and protest. He said, I am most worried about drugs. This is the way towards the degradation of a nation. Mr. Putin also said he was worried about bad language in rap, saying he had spoken to a linguist about it, while she had explained to him that swearing is a part of our language. Mr. Putin compared it to the human body, joking that we have all sorts of body parts, and it is not like we put them on display all the time. The Russian government has long had a complicated relationship with music. Feminist protest and Pussy Riot claims Russia, its intelligence service, poisoned member Pyotr Berthlev earlier this year. Under the Soviet Union, meanwhile, most Western pop and rock music was frowned on, and some Russian rock musicians faced persecution. Even classical musicians clashed with the state. Composer Dmitry Shostakovich was denounced twice under the leadership of Joseph Stalin. An immediate ceasefire in Yemen, its war, will actually come into effect on 18 December, officials say. After the initial deal was followed by violence, the warring sides agreed to end fighting in the vital port city of Hudaydah last Thursday. A day later, airstrikes and fierce clashes were reported between pro-government forces and Houthi rebels. And Yemeni officials say the ceasefire delay is needed so that orders can be passed to ground troops. The UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, has urged both sides to respect the obligations and spirit of the agreement, which followed unbrokered talks in Sweden. Hudaydah,
140千米 90
miles west of the capital Sana'a, was Yemen's fourth largest city and a major economic hub before rebels took control of it in late 2014. As a port, it is also a lifeline for just under two-thirds of Yemen, its population, who rely almost entirely on imports for food, fuel and medicine. It is one of the areas controlled by the rebels, but since June has been under assault by a Saudi-led coalition backing the pro-government troops. More than 22 million Yemenis need some form of aid, and 8 million do not know how they will obtain their next meal. Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that severe food shortages could deteriorate further if the truce included fails. At least 10,000 people have already died in the 4-year conflict, the World Health Organization says. President Donald Trump is choice of a new acting White House chief of staff once described him as a terrible human being. It has emerged. A video shows Mick Mulvaney making the disparaging remark in a debate shortly before the 2016 presidential election. Yes, I am supporting Donald Trump, but I am doing so despite the fact that I think he's a terrible human being, Mr. Mulvaney says. He describes Mr. Trump, his then opponent, Hillary Clinton, as just as bad. Mr. Mulvaney,
51
is a former Republican congressman, and the video, which was obtained by the Daily Beast, was taken during a debate with the Democratic challenger Frank Person in York, South Carolina.